The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
I'm your darkest dream. They call me devil. My heart is empty. They call me devil, and you should be afraid.
Hello and welcome to tonight's show of Betrayal on Armed Radio. I'm your host, Kasy, and I want to give a shout out to Taylor Winter for his wonderful comment saying, "Awesome content, keep it up, keep up the amazing work." And I want to say thank you so much. Apparently he really loved the Jack the Ripper episode. And I certainly appreciate the comments and everything. Thank you so much. So tonight's episode, it's actually pretty darn close to home. Of course, I live in Austin, Texas, and everybody, we're all dealing with this. I keep calling it different things: the coronavirus, I'm also calling it the plague and everything. It's not the plague, but it certainly feels like it. Everybody is on lockdown, and kids are out of school, and it's crazy. I mean, going inside the grocery store just to get your necessity things, it looks like a war zone. The last time I saw it that empty was during Hurricane Harvey, and there is like a 2-hour wait just to get into the store, and the store is completely bare. And I mean, that 2-hour wait is like at 8 a.m. when they open, because the stores are on a special time where they're open from 8 to 8 p.m. And it's not going to lighten up anytime soon, it looks like. I mean, everybody is closing down. Just today alone, they're like closing all the restaurants. You can get takeout, but all the restaurants are closed. And it just seems like, businesses, everything is just shutting down. And for those people who are, home-based or, small businesses, or they work for themselves, real estate agents who work for themselves, this is going to, there's no unemployment. There's nothing. So when your pipeline is frozen and you don't have money coming in, it's going to get scary pretty soon for a lot of us who depend on, we work on commission. And so if we're not making commission, we're not making money. But the people at Whole Foods, the people at Amazon, and the people, I believe, at Walmart, no, I don't think Walmart, are hiring people temporarily to basically restock the shelves, because if I were to take like a video of these shelves and put like apocalyptic music to it, it would definitely fit. But we just have to, be mindful of, just everything. We're going to be isolated, basically. And if you live alone and you don't have a pet or anyone else to talk to, there are resources. There are mental health resources online that are affordable. Also, it's a chance to get social on social chats and join in any kind of social chat just to kind of have somebody to talk to. Because I know, living by yourself, it sucks sometimes, especially if you can't go out. I mean, I call it the silence. It can be very oppressive and very loud. And because there's no one calling you, there's nothing. It's just like the television. And so we just need to take care of each other. We need to take care of our senior citizens and just be a global community. I will tell you this, if you are a person who is by themselves, turning on the TV or turning on the radio or turning on a podcast, and podcasts are free. And so you can get free podcasts. Even if you don't have a Apple phone, you can still have access to Apple Podcasts. You can still have access to Spotify podcasts, TuneIn podcast, Spreaker podcast, iHeartRadio podcast, Google Play podcast. Those are all going to be free, regardless if you have an Android phone or an Apple phone. They work. My parents have Android phones, and they're able to listen to Apple Podcasts on their Android phones. So you don't need to have that, but you definitely need to have either cellular service or internet service. And I would check with your cellular company. I believe AT&T has waived any overages on their services. So if you are streaming, movies or what have you, you could do so on AT&T, but I would definitely check with them. If you're on T-Mobile, I believe data is always free. Sprint, I've got Sprint, and I know that data is free with that. Verizon, I believe data is free for them as well. So you can actually listen to podcasts on your cell phone. You can watch movies on your cell phone. You can, do social chats and things like that on your cell phone, or if you have something called a tethering, which I would definitely check the prices on that. Make sure it's not going to, you're not going to get like $1,000, bill the next month. You can actually use your tether, which is your mobile data minutes, and use that for like your tablet or, iPad or anything like that. And you can actually watch TV and whatnot, or put it onto your computer, because going to Wi-Fi, like a lot of millennials like to do, go to a Starbucks, go to the library, or go to any of these in-house dining where they have free Wi-Fi, that's no longer an option, and I know there was a time there where I was going, my only source of internet was going to Barnes and Nobles to their, free Wi-Fi, or going to a Starbucks, or, one of those places to get mobile, get a Wi-Fi signal so I can at least, answer emails or see what's going on in the world. Well, here's a workaround with that and everything, is that you could go in the parking lot. Like, I went to a Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts has free Wi-Fi. And in the parking lot, I was able to receive the signal and not leave my vehicle. And so I would be out in my car, surfing on the internet and do what I need to do. And what I would do is I would download YouTube videos, like, that night, or I'd download some movies from like a Netflix or television shows that I wanted to see. And then excuse me, Texas allergies, that's what I'm experiencing. It happens every year. You feel like crap when the ragweed and the cedar and everything like that is in bloom. And it's not right now. Anybody who has like a sore throat or a cough or anything like that, they're thinking, oh my gosh, you have the plague. Not necessarily, especially in Texas, especially central Texas. But what I was going to say is that, if you download all that stuff, you can go home, and when you don't have internet, you can play what you downloaded. And that way, you can watch at least television shows, or you can watch movies, or you can, watch a movie or what have you. And I will tell you this, I was doing research for a book, and the book was actually a true story book. And so I was like, okay, I can't, I don't have the availability. You don't realize how much you use the internet until you don't have it. And so I would go to Wi-Fi, and I have like a list of things I need to research. And I would research those things. take screenshots, and I would take notes, just like if you went to the library and, in high school and you made notes and then you went home and you made your report and everything. And so, was able to make notes and everything. And when I had an idea at home, like, okay, I can't really research that, I made a note of it. The next day I went to Wi-Fi and I researched what I needed to research. And then I came back home and I did more writing because, Microsoft Word, if it's not internet or iCloud based, it's on your computer. And at that time it was on my computers before they did all the iCloud or, web-based stuff. It was, 2012. And so I was doing all that research and everything, and I got everything done. Granted, it sucks having to go to Wi-Fi and then come back, and you have to get what you needed done in a certain amount of time. And, that does suck. And having internet at home is so much more easier because you can just chill and just anytime you need to look up something, you had access to it. But also at the time that I was doing that research, the cell phone that I had it was very bad reception. So I was not able to get onto the internet to the point where I could actually research some things off my phone. And I was not even able to listen to the radio or anything. So it was for several months there, I was not able to do, listen to any music or, watch any television shows or any kind of movies because, I didn't have Netflix or anything like that because I was going through a major event and I didn't have internet or anything. So it was just silence. It was from the time you get up until the time you go to sleep, there is no communication whatsoever, no phone calls, nothing. It was isolation. So I started picking up the books that I had in my house and I started reading books. And I'm going to tell you this is that, believe it or not, before all the internet and everything like that, growing up as a kid or even before then, before the internet, before television, there was a thing called books and self-entertaining and everything. So books were television for people. So I started reading a lot of books about various things. And, that helps pass the time. But, it's not the same as having a conversation with another human being, because as human beings, we want to be, kind of together. We like to congregate together. Well, right now, we're really not able to congregate together. So we have to rely on ourselves and we have to be isolated from other people. Unless you have a family, your kids or anything like that will keep you busy. You'll be praying for silence, perhaps, and everything. But for those who are single or who don't have anyone else, who are living alone, who don't have pets or anyone else, it's quite a mental battlefield. Because even in prison, I will tell you this, in prison, solitary confinement, being isolated from people for a period of time, you're only allowed to be isolated for a short period of time before people start losing their mind. Well, you guys, when you're living by yourself, yes, you can leave your house or anything like that, but right now you can't really leave your house. It's not recommended unless you're going to the grocery store. So basically, you're being put into solitary confinement in a way. And for some of us, it's a prison of either your mind or a prison of silence, and it's very scary. So basically, what I would recommend is just, step outside of your home, take a deep breath outside, and, if you've got a cell phone, try and use that to socialize with. I mean, I don't care if you use any of those, social media apps. I mean, I'm getting on Instagram. I don't know hide nor hair how to use Instagram. I mean, apparently there's what they're called bots where, if you have a new or if you have a profile and you start posting things, all these bots start following you. You're like, holy crap, that's awesome. But then these bots are Middle Eastern people who speak in Middle Eastern and write in Middle Eastern. It's like, and I started looking at it, I was like, why do I have a bunch of Middle Eastern people following my page? I'm like, I don't know any of these people. How do they know me? And everything. Because Instagram is owned by Facebook. So I was, questioning that because I was like, how are all these Middle Eastern people, and they're Middle Eastern guys mostly. And they're all like going into your inbox saying, hey, sweetheart, hey, honey, and hey, love. And, and they're asking you for dates and everything. I'm like, seriously, I'm in Texas. You're in the Middle East. It's not going to happen. And they're so very forward with their talking. I mean, they automatically, in the South, to call a woman honey or sweetie or babe, that's very forward. That's a very intimate word. And you don't say that to a woman, that you don't know. It's rude. That's what it's considered. Now, there are certain cases, in public where they're like, oh, bless your heart. Oh, sweetheart, that's okay. There's like a politeness in the South. The South, believe it or not, is a very polite place. Sorry, just got a list of a text message. But the South is a very polite place. We say please and thank you. We get up from our seat to give it to an older person. We give up our seat for a woman. We open up doors. We don't care how old you are. We open up doors for people. We say hello. We will strike up a conversation with a total stranger. We are a polite people. If your kid is acting a fool, we will, basically talk to that kid. And it's not that we're saying you're a bad parent or anything. We just are like a collective. It's like we raise each other's kids. If we see a mom who's struggling, her kid is acting foolish, we're going to be like, what the heck are you doing? To help them. It's basically to help the mom or the dad or the grandparent who has a kid who's acting foolish and everything. And, it's not considered rude. In the South, it's considered, what you're supposed to do. And it's like if your kid's running around in a restaurant acting a fool, we're going to be like talking to the parent like, what the heck are you doing? It's just not done in the South and everything because we are very polite people. Now, granted, I know you guys see the images of like we're a bunch of racist, redneck, backwards people. Well, yeah, there are some of us who are that way. But in a generalized, on the whole, the South are people who are incredibly polite and giving. Texas is known as the friendship state. And it's, it's the Lone Star state, but it's also the friendship state and everything. And that's completely true. If a woman is stranded on the side of the road, you'll have 20 people, including, oh my gosh, I had an elderly man like wanting to take the tire off my car to help me out. And I'm like, you're so frail. I'm like, the crowbar would like break you in half, but he was trying and everything. So, people will help. There'll be people who, if you're pushing out your grocery cart and something falls off your grocery cart, you'll have like 10 to 20 people running after this piece of something to give back to you. They'll help people. It's just, it's crazy, but we don't get that kind of media coverage, where we're helping each other, we get the media coverage to where, someone is acting a fool and they're like, oh gosh, everyone in the South is a bunch of racist, foolish people. And that's just not the case, not the case at all. But this tangent's not for, no reason or anything. I just wanted to give a bit of hope to those who are, we're all in this together as a humanity. We're in this together. It's a scary time, but fear drives people to do foolish things. And we cannot allow fear to make us do foolish things, like hoarding stuff. Seriously, like you need that much toilet paper and you need that much milk. Are you like milking a cow here? That stuff is going to go bad. You're going to waste it. That's foolish in itself. Don't do that. There are older people who went to the grocery store who couldn't get what they needed because of foolishness that's going on right now. Let's just stop the foolishness because we don't need it right now. We need to be helpful. We need to be compassionate, and we need to stay the crap away from each other unless you're living in the same household. But we still need to, make sure we're taking care of each other, because at the end of the day, money, power, all that stuff, that virus does not give two shits of who your social status is. They don't care if you're a celebrity. They don't care if you're dirt ass poor. They don't care if you're a billionaire, the richest person on the face of the planet. They don't care if you're a president. They don't care if you're a king, a queen, a prince, or a princess. It does not, it's indiscriminate. If you catch it, it does not care. If you're around somebody who has it and you catch it, it doesn't care if you're rich or poor. It doesn't. So we just need to be wise about things, and isolating ourselves basically exposes who is sick so they can get the help that they need from the trained professionals who know what to do. And we're not overloading the system, overloading the healthcare system, because these people work 12-hour shifts and now they're working 24-hour shifts. Have you ever stayed up 24 hours? You're dead ass tired. Now imagine busting your ass working your hiney off 24 hours. There's only so much you can do that. More text messages. But, we've got to, if they're able to have only 5 people in isolation as opposed to 1,000 people in isolation, that's a lot better. 20 people in isolation is a lot better than having 50 people in isolation. When we isolate ourselves, we decrease the amount of us coming in contact with someone who has it. And then those people who have it can go to the hospital, get what they need taken care of. We've got the resources and we've got the personnel and everything. Because we've got the medical equipment and the things to do it. The resources is the human resources, the doctors, the nurses, the staff who are helping you. There's only a certain amount that they can do before they just are exhausted beyond belief. And so we've got to help them out by just keeping ourselves at our homes. It's going to suck. It sucks not being able to go to the beach, not being able to go to a movie, not being able to go out and shop, not being able to go out and do what you normally would do. It sucks. But it sucks even more if you get this thing and you die from it. If you are one of those people who are in the at-risk category and you die from it. Or it sucks that if you get it and you spread it to someone you love who's in the at-risk category. It sucks even more. When I see all those people in Florida going to the beach, I'm like, well, it sucks being at home and I'd rather be at the beach, all those thousands of people at Padre Island right now. What the hell are you guys thinking? The question is you're not thinking. You're thinking that you're immune to it because you're a bunch of young people who think, oh, your shit doesn't stink. Well, I hate to tell you, but you're just sitting there contaminating each other and being all kinds of foolishness. But that's not the reason why we're having this show today. That was just my public service announcement, PSA, on the coronavirus, because someone's got to say it. But I'm going to talk to you guys about a woman. Her name is Rachel Cooke, and she vanished on Christmas break in 2002 from a town called Georgetown. Georgetown is North Austin. And Georgetown is considered, the town center is considered the most beautiful town center in Texas. And it really is. It's a beautiful town center. And they take a lot of pride in that. And Georgetown's a great community. I mean, I go up to well, not right now. You know, I go up to Georgetown. I've gone to Georgetown quite a bit to various things, including the downtown area. And she vanished less than 100 yards from her home. Just poofed, vanished. They do not have, she's a cold case, okay? She's an unsolved case. They have no clue of what happened to this woman. She was there and then she was gone. They actually said she could have been abducted by aliens because there's like no evidence of anything. They're actually going through the entire case in 2019 to try and get clues as to what happened to this woman, because they honestly don't know. So, if you guys have any tips and you're in the Georgetown area, you understand, or you might have saw her in 2002, you remember all this stuff, you might be able to help solve this case. And help put, a grieving, a family who has lost a child, I mean, granted, she was a teenager, she was 19 and everything, but still somebody's child, regardless. You might be able to give some peace to a family who has lost their daughter and bring to justice the person that did it. I mean, in Central Texas, I mean, anything could have happened. I mean, we've got, mountain lions, we've got bobcats, we've got boars. Boars, oh my gosh, they'll rip you a new one. But I want you to listen to this show, listen to this recording of the investigation, and enjoy. Okay, and I'll see you guys next week because it's pretty long.
Her smile alone can light up the vast plains of Central Texas.
Her humor was infectious.
But lovely Rachel Cooke has been silenced at the age of 19.
She just flat disappeared.
It's almost as if the vivacious young college student had been sucked into a black hole or plucked from the earth. Even the sheriff at the time had no answers for anguished loved ones.
He looks me square in the eye and says, for all we know, an alien spaceship came down here and took her away.
But sadly, the mystery of Rachel Cooke remains just that.
It's a guessing game. People ask me, what do you think happened? I have no clue what happened.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I'd have a memorial tree for my daughter.
When Janet and Joanne Cooke visit this thriving tree of life in Georgetown, Texas, it brings them as spiritually close as they can get to their missing loved one.
She was so pretty, she was so athletic. We were just really, really close, very much alike in a lot of different ways.
Let's go back to when she was a little girl. What was she like?
She was an extremely giving person. If a friend was in need, she was there.
Rachel had one particular passion.
How big a part of her life was running?
It was huge. She got really big into cross-country, track.
She could just keep going like an Energizer bunny. She just kept running and running and running.
Rachel was a Lone Star stunner, but the eternal sunshine and whipping waves of the West Coast were beckoning.
How did she end up leaving Georgetown?
She was always drawn to California. She thought it was a land of vegetarians and, good music and beaches.
And off she went to the coastline near San Diego, where Rachel enrolled in community college. And most of all, she wanted to be with Greg West, a man she met shortly after moving to the coast.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is the real thing. This is it. This is what it feels like. I mean, butterflies, we were so goofy together.
Do you want to pose?
It was incredible. She was amazing.
She was with Greg, and she was very happy with that relationship, and it meant a lot to her. She was just talking to me about, like, I think that, he's the one.
The couple made plans to move in together, and Rachel invited her California boy to Texas for the Christmas holidays. Greg couldn't stay the whole trip. He had to get back to San Diego for work. Rachel planned to be with her family a few more days, but in fact, she would never make it back to San Diego, at least as far as anyone knows.
Tell me about the morning that she disappeared.
That morning, Joanne and I went to leave for work. Rachel was laying on the couch, and I walked over, and Joanne said, "Mom, don't wake her up." And I went over and I kissed on her, and I said, "Love you, bye." And that's what her response was.
She was sleeping.
She was sleeping. Leave me alone, Mom.
Rachel's father, Robert, also left for work that morning, leaving Rachel with the house to herself.
We know that her boyfriend, who was in California at the time, Greg West, talked to her around 9:15, and she was talking about going for a run.
She was fine. She was, happy to talk to me, of course. And then, I said, "Have you been running yet?" She's like, "No, not yet, but I'm going to go." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Well, just, call me afterwards or whatever."
Rachel shakes off the grogginess and suits up for her 6-mile morning run before planning to spend the rest of the day with her dad, Robert.
She was supposed to hang out with her father in the afternoon. He was going to take off work early, and they were going to go shopping. She had a wedding she was getting ready for.
Rachel begins her run in the quiet, rural, familiar, and crime-free neighborhood where she grew up.
When she went running, she ran to the east of her house, and there was a gentleman working on a piece of equipment spreading dirt for a new home that was under construction, and he saw her run by. There was an elderly couple walking in the neighborhood that lived next door to Rachel Cooke, and they saw her as well. 6
different people saw Rachel running that day. Some even saw her finishing up in a cool down just 2 houses from her own. But that would be the last time anyone would ever see or speak to Rachel Cooke.
She disappeared within 100 yards from her home.
It seems unfathomable. A young woman in broad daylight in bright-colored athletic wear seen by scores of neighbors. Here 1 second, gone the next.
Everybody has a theory, but there's no evidence to support anybody's theory, including some of our theories.
Rachel Cooke vanished in the blink of an eye in broad daylight.
And there were several people in the neighborhood that were residents there that saw her run by them, talked to her, waved at her, knew who she was from the neighborhood because they'd lived there so long.
Rachel disappeared just 100 yards from her family's home in the rural Texas enclave of Georgetown. She was home from San Diego for Christmas break. The spirited young college student was never seen again.
I don't think that people will ever forget Rachel.
Sally Hernandez from our Austin affiliate, KXAN, was one of the first reporters on the case.
It was probably the most famous missing persons case in Central Texas.
And one with a significant number of theories about what happened.
Can you explain to me the significance of where we are right now?
So in one of our theories, this is the intersection we believe she was last seen.
You say she was walking. She wasn't running at this point.
This was her cool-down period. This was the end of her run.
Robert Chody was just recently elected. He's the 3rd sheriff to oversee the case of Rachel Cooke. It will take Chody on a dizzying journey involving a riveting cast of characters, all of whom will get a thorough re-examination. You'll hear about Rachel's seemingly obsessive ex-boyfriend.
He was like, I gave her 4 years of my life. She can give me 4 minutes of her time.
Rachel's own father, who failed a polygraph.
Many people were saying that, well, he did it then.
The suspicious young men cruising the neighborhood.
There were some reports of a certain type of vehicle being seen, some guys driving around. What can you tell us about that?
I can tell you that's true.
And most compelling of all, a convicted murderer who played Rachel's family and police like a fiddle.
And I remember getting a call from one of her family members saying, hey, something big is going to go down. We're going to have a press conference, and I think we got him.
Chody inherited the case from 2 previous sheriffs, and there are those who will tell you a veritable mess was thrown in his lap.
Do you believe a lot of time was wasted because the authorities didn't take it seriously enough?
Yeah. In fact, what they told me is during my questioning that they truly think that she just took off with somebody. She's a young, beautiful woman, and I was like, okay, how does that make sense? So she's living her dream life in San Diego, having all these plans, and then to come back to Texas to then run away?
And while it's common practice in many jurisdictions to wait 24 hours to begin a missing persons investigation, that wasn't the case in Georgetown.
The 24-hour rule of reporting missing people, that's not true. And I don't know what the motivations were behind the administration prior to that.
Reportedly, then Sheriff John Maspero demanded the Cooke family not be questioned. According to former Lieutenant John Foster, who worked Rachel's case, I was told that was not going to happen, and that was per the sheriff, that we were not to question the Cookes.
I mean, they dropped the ball, man. They dropped the ball.
It's easy to understand why the Cookes began their own investigation even before the police. They called hospitals and friends.
Robert went and started driving the route that she used to run.
They called the Wildfire restaurant where Rachel would pick up waitress shifts while in town. That call turned out to be a cruel twist of fate.
When I called, I said, is Rachel working there tonight? And they said, yeah. Well, I didn't know that wasn't my Rachel. It was a different Rachel. There were 2 Rachels.
Oh, that's awful. You lost so much precious time.
I lost time there.
By the time police did get serious, it was too late. Rachel Cooke's perplexing case went into an investigative deep freeze. But former Sheriff Maspero fiercely defends his record, telling our affiliate KXAN in 2011, I brought in the finest people I could think of, the Rangers, FBI, APD. We went beyond the scope of what was called for, and I'm disappointed Rachel's case is still unsolved. Maspero was forced out of office while being investigated for serious misconduct, including allegations of sexual harassment in the workplace, crawling on the floor of a men's club barking like a dog, then biting a dancer, and indecent exposure. Maspero died in 2014.
I don't know if we're any closer to figuring out what really happened that morning.
Not if Robert Chody has anything to say about it, and he does.
So there's a new sheriff in town.
That's right.
He's marshaled an army of veteran retired homicide detectives to start from scratch.
Is the cold room this way, or?
The war room, yes, it's
war
right up
room.
here on the right-hand side.
Now,
this is what we established as our cold case unit. We have a different set of eyes on it, and we're starting from the beginning and checking every box that we can.
Chody ordered new searches and is plowing through a staggering number of leads, some new and old.
We've had over 1,700 tips. We're still receiving tips today. We've probably had 30 or 40 in the last few months. So we're trying to track down every single lead.
How many persons of interest do you have in this case?
Well over 100.
Persons of interest. That's a threshold that you have to meet to become a person of interest.
Correct.
It's not like Sheriff Chody needs the money or the pressure of solving difficult cold cases.
One way that you are unlike any other sheriff in this country because you really did win the lottery.
My wife won the lottery, but I get to partake in that part of it.
$85 million worth of partaking, in fact. But for Chody, justice for Rachel's family is far more worth its weight in gold. And for Chody, it's personal.
I grew up in a domestic violent home, and it was a police officer that literally saved the day for me and my family. And after that event, I had this drive and desire to serve in law enforcement.
Chody and his team have got to make up for lost time. How how does a family survive the pain of a missing daughter? The tortuous unknown.
You know, we were kind of like best friends. We had the same sense of humor. We loved hanging out. In some ways, it even gets harder as I get older, because
the unsolved mystery tainted by accusations of past shoddy police work.
I want to know what happened. I want to bring my baby home, and I'm not going to quit.
Newly minted Sheriff Robert Chody is starting from scratch with a staggering list of 100 persons of interest.
So in essence, you are re-interviewing all of the people who were interviewed the first time.
We're trying to. There's some people who don't want to speak anymore for whatever reason, family members included.
So are family members on that list? Remember, disgraced former Sheriff John Maspero wouldn't allow the Cookes to be questioned.
Maspero knew that nobody in my family or myself would have done it. I mean, we knew each other, for years, from kids' kindergarten on up.
But later, during the course of the investigation, there was an intriguing event involving Rachel's father, Robert. Remember, at the time of Rachel's disappearance, he was planning to leave work early to take his daughter shopping. When Robert Cooke did eventually take a polygraph, it didn't go well.
The father failed the polygraph test, which is true. But he failed one question. And one question that he failed was, do you know where Rachel Cooke is? And his answer is no, and he fails that.
Robert's ex-wife, Janet, offered an explanation.
They asked him, do you know where Rachel is? And he said no, and it came up as a false answer. That's because we kind of thought maybe Rachel's dead. And Robert had transferred that into Rachel's in heaven. And that was his strong belief. Rachel's in heaven now. So if somebody asked you, that question, well, yeah, it's going to come up as a false answer.
Do you believe that?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I do not believe her father had anything to do with it.
Robert became deeply immersed in the leading national missing persons organization, EquiSearch. He even traveled to Aruba to work on the famed Natalie Holloway case, but Rachel was his priority.
He dedicated the rest of his life to locating her, and I don't believe he did that to cover for being involved.
Eventually, his marriage to Janet failed.
Why'd you guys divorce?
He became extremely driven about Rachel's case, and I had to have some separation from that. And he got to where he didn't treat me very well.
100 persons of interest no doubt crowds the field of suspicion, but some gravitate toward the top more than others.
I told him, yo, man, you need to stop calling here, dude. She doesn't want to talk to you anymore. You got to stop.
Thomas was Rachel's previous boyfriend, and he was not about to give up without a fight, even pouring his heart out to Rachel's new man, Greg West.
He sounded like an emotionally impassionate person, like not in control of his emotions, if that makes sense. I mean, so he just was crying and like...
He's on the phone crying with you?
Yeah.
So he finds out Rachel is home for Christmas, and what does he start doing?
She was at this party and he showed up. And so it did not go well, from what I was told.
Can you explain?
Yeah, they like... had a huge blowout fight.
What about an ex-boyfriend? Was there an issue with an ex-boyfriend?
That person that you're speaking of was certainly somebody that we were still interested in, and until we can check that box to take him off the suspect list or person of interest list, then he remains on that list.
And then there were those mysterious young men in a white car, seemingly out of place in Rachel's neighborhood during her run.
Somebody saw them in the area that the same time frame that they believe Rachel Cooke to be in that area. So we want to question those people.
But the most chilling aspect of this case involves this man, career criminal Michael Keith Moore, a convicted murderer who once sliced the throat of a 14-week pregnant woman named Christina Moore as she pleaded for her life on her knees. Moore would stun investigators when he came forward and confessed to the murder of Rachel Cooke.
He said that he was the one who kidnapped and killed Rachel and then dumped her body near the Houston area.
It was the break in the closure cops, family members, and an entire community had desperately hoped for.
The sheriff's department had brought me in and talked with me and said, you know, some of the things he's saying, it sounds like these facts lead us to believe that he's telling the truth.
Moore was out of prison at the time of Rachel's disappearance and lived nearby. His involvement seemed plausible. Finally, the day of reckoning had come. Moore struck a deal with prosecutors to plead guilty to Rachel's murder.
He confessed to the murder of Rachel Cooke. That was all we needed.
It was a packed courtroom, the end of a painful journey. All eyes on Michael Keith Moore.
I could see there was just humanity missing out of his eyes. I don't know if that makes any sense.
They were cold.
They were cold. No energy, no spirit there. It scared me to look into his eyes.
4 years after Rachel Cooke vanished, career criminal Michael Keith Moore was about to plead guilty to her murder.
So it's huge news.
It's huge. It's huge news. We got a name. We got a suspect.
Couldn't believe it. I remember the first time I saw his face. He just pure evil.
Did you believe him, though?
I don't know if I believed him or not, but what he did was disgusting. By dragging us through that, he wrote a very detailed story about what he did. Just hearing those things is just too much.
Moore voluntarily confessed, telling police he kidnapped Rachel, bludgeoned her with a hammer, and dumped her body into the Gulf of Mexico.
When he confesses to the murder and gives some detail of the murder, detectives have no choice but to believe what he's saying, because who in their right mind would confess to a murder that they didn't do? And some of what he said made sense.
And then came that long-anticipated day inside this jammed Central Texas courtroom.
Everyone assembles in the courtroom. Michael Moore has confessed to killing Rachel, and he is going to enter into a plea agreement. All the cameras are there. You could see the family excited in closure, right?
Mm-hmm. But there would be nothing that resembles closure or justice, nothing even close. What Michael Moore had planned was a sadistic hoax.
Calls number 06-18-23-K368, State versus Michael Keith Moore. The charge of murder is alleged. How do you plead?
Moore's stunning reversal rocked the courtroom. The convicted killer, con man, and all-around bad guy delivered an emotionally lethal blow to the family of Rachel Cooke.
Get that home.
What did he do to the family by putting everybody through this?
Why would you do that to us? I mean, it's just sick. It's psychotic.
We think that, something's going to happen, and then it's just kind of ripped away from us. So I think a lot of people in my family, it was just kind of like disbelief and anger.
The fact that he admitted to it and then denied it shows you what type of personality and what kind of monster he really is.
But then why say I did it in the first place? And didn't he offer authorities very specific details that made it plausible that he could have been the killer?
Yeah, I don't know how specific or how much information was put out in the media back then. I know that you ask one reason why he did it. He got a ride to the coast. He got to eat some cheeseburgers because he was sitting in a cell in Texas prison prior to that. So he got something out of the lie, if that's the case. You're looking at me like...
Yeah, like he did it just to get out of jail for a little bit to...
It wouldn't be the first time.
The district attorney could not pursue the case against Moore. There was just no evidence to prove he killed Rachel.
And the cross, I don't know who brought it.
For Janet and Joanne Cooke, there's no expiration date on the crushing pain they still feel. Sister Joanne isn't sure she even wants to hear the truth anymore.
You feel that any news you got now would be bad news. Is it almost like you don't want to hear anything?
Sometimes, and I think that's one thing that makes me very different than my mom, is because I think she feels like finding something out will bring closure and relief, whereas me, I feel like it'll just be, it'll be those things that I don't want to see, that I don't want to know are true.
There's another tragic turn in all of this. Rachel's father, Robert, passed away after a long illness, and most certainly of a broken heart.
What do you mean say?
Robert Cooke went to his grave never knowing what happened to his daughter.
How do you think this permanently affected your father?
I know he felt like he had failed her, that he wasn't there, he didn't protect her. But I don't think that at all. I think he's done so much to try to help her out and try to figure out what happened.
And despite the frustration, the setbacks, and the missteps of previous administrations, Sheriff Robert Chody vows to forge ahead.
And we actually have 4 investigators on her case. That's all they do is they're working the Rachel Cooke case.
And Michael Keith Moore is also very well placed on Chody's list.
Do you think Michael Moore did it?
I think he's a strong suspect, yes.
Still.
With 100 persons of interest, but not a single eyewitness or a speck of physical evidence, it's going to take more than aggressive police work. Chody wants the public to share the workload.
So I really do believe this is a solvable case. We just got to get that information.
Would you say that it's reasonable to assume that if someone out there knows something, if they haven't said it yet or turned it over yet, what makes anybody think that they're going to do it now?
I think because somewhere, someone down the line is going to mess up. I think they've kept the secret for so long that eventually they're going to mess up and they're going to tell somebody, they're going to tell an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend, and that person's going to come forward and it's going to say something. And finally, the truth will come out.
Well, that is the story of Rachel Cooke from Georgetown, Texas. And, honestly, I recognize some of those streets. Of course, the downtown streets I recognize quite a bit. But some of those back roads are actually not quite back roads. Georgetown is basically like living in the country, but you're in the city because Austin has just grown so much that it's pretty much in the city, but it's actually, you can actually go down a street and you'll feel like you're miles outside of the city, and then you turn down another street and there's like, a supermarket. So that's kind of how it is in Texas, is that, you're in a rural area. You could have 2.5 acres surrounded by a subdivision and, be on a country road, and then you fork and then you're in a major city road. So it's this kind of, it has like it's a big town that has a small town feel to it. You feel like you're just remote. And, of course, that guy who confessed to the murders just to torture the family even further. That's so despicable. It's pure evil. And, I do know that in Williamson County, they do have challenges with, good cops and cops who are just not doing their job and everything, who I would say is a disgrace to the badge. They disgrace the ones who are actually doing their job by being corrupt. And they tarnish that badge because people remember the corrupt cops over the ones that actually are doing their job and actually care. And so, so it's just one of those unfortunate things. But to be going over this case and everything and trying to find, clues onto who did it and everything that's quite a challenge, because it's been a long time. It's been over 18 years since 2000 And I cannot believe it's been that long since 2000. And so it's going to be really difficult to put the pieces together and solve this case. And, but it's not impossible, because there are people who have solved cases like from the 1950s. Granted, a lot of the family members are probably have passed on, but it gives some sort of resolution to cases. A lot of police officers and detectives who have retired, they actually, in their retirement, they'll take on cold cases, and they'll pour through these cold cases trying to solve them in their spare time, because they've got a lot of spare time. And sometimes they will see something that they might have missed, or somebody might have missed. And that's the whole thing, is when you're doing detective work, is that, sometimes when it's an active case, there's many eyes and many opinions in picking up the evidence and things like that. And with that, minute details can be overlooked, because you're just in a rush to try and either find this person alive or to find this person, period. And in that rush, we gloss over those minute details that could be quite important. And we look for big clues as to so we can link them together and solve the case. And I think that's kind of a flaw that we have in our system, is that we're looking for these big clues to link together. And when we don't find those, we kind of just, put it off to the side, and we just, wait for somebody to come forward. Well, a lot of people who do despicable acts, they're not going to come forward and say, yeah, I did it. I totally did it. It's just, why would you incriminate yourself? Especially in this country, we don't want to incriminate ourselves. We want to, keep silent. Then there are people who are narcissistic, psychotic sociopaths who want the credit. The narcissism in them want the credit. And so they'll brag. They'll start to brag. And it's in those bragging moments that a lot of cases get solved. Because there's like, yep. If you remember O.J. Simpson, he said he wrote a book, and it was originally called If I Did It. And there was so much backlash over that, they changed the title to say, What If I Did It? But there was all this evidence all these recounting of what happened was the missing pieces in the case. But unfortunately, because he was found not guilty, he can never be tried for this case ever again. They have to try him on a new count. And that's the whole thing with double jeopardy. You cannot retry a person over and over again for the same crime. And so, but I can tell right now that we are officially out of time, and I will see you next week. Be safe out there. Bye-bye.